males versus females. I think they are all males though. So very important to get a few photos of these guys, and we'll send them off to the Endangered Wildlife Trust. A friend of mine runs the working group for wild dogs in the Lowveld, and they are an endangered species, so as soon as we get a chance to get pictures, we want to get pictures of their right side, and that is used for ID purposes. So we can see 1, 2, 3, 4 at the moment. Could be waiting for the 5th one. So they are the 2nd most endangered canid in Africa. There's only about 4,500 left in the wild. And the only viable wild breeding populations of wild dogs in South Africa, the Greater Kruger is the only sort of big viable breeding population, and it's only recently got back to that. When I first started guiding in this area, there were about 450 to 500 wild dog, and then there was an outbreak of rape. Did you guys hear that? That's that contact woo call. So that's the 5th guy who got a little bit lost. There's one still lying up ahead here. Others are off into the bush to the right. Oh, I think we're going to be on the move again shortly. There we go. And looks like they're gonna take us on a bit of a through the bush again. Just trying to see if I can get that general direction. See if we can possibly get just ahead of them. This block is a little bit more challenging than the last block, so do bear with us. So Jamie's on the far right of them, and I'm going to come up on the left of them. See, I've already found one here that we didn't know was even all this way far left. And they are approaching very closely to our southern boundary. That's not to say they could just turn west down the road and head towards Arathusa, which would be wonderful because we can still continue on with them. Coming out onto the boundary road. Andrew, you looking into the bush here? There's zebra, impala, zebra rolling. Jamie. Morning for my shower. Where? Yeah, but I got this side up. Just 1 second. Confirm you still got visual. Copy, thanks. They tried to bomb a spinner, they went south. Morning everyone. I'll call them on the Eastern Channel if they come this side. So you guys, another vehicle there. Jamie just said that it chased a Steenbok. So we're going to try look around in this area. Morning zebras. Lost visual. Last direction they were hearing and tearing was in the block this way. But if they might have caught that Steenbok, I'm just going to turn off and listen. So what we're listening for is that high-pitched chatter of excitement that wild dogs make when they catch something. Andrew's just giving the lens a quick wipe. So we can't hear anything just yet. And Jamie's checking here. Taxon's going to check on Zoe's. I think it's worth our while heading back to the boundary road to have another look. So guys, just have to have a quick chat here with one of the other guides. They've lost them in this block here. They were chasing Spene, so we've got more of us checking that side. I'm going to check back down the cut line in case they've turned around, because they were coming south and then they turned around and went north after the Spene. Bye. So a lot of you are wondering, what sort of sized animals can a wild dog hunt? And more Risha. I was wondering, would they be able to hunt a zebra? Would 5 be enough to hunt a zebra? I don't think so, Marisha. Not an adult zebra, baby zebra, yes, but a zebra is such an aggressive animal. It would be able to chase that off. Whereas if it were to hunt, say, I have seen 5, 6 wild dogs take down an adult kudu bull. So they are incredibly efficient hunters. So this is where we last had a brief visual of them. And there is a lucky little, oh no, it's running now. But there was a little zyker who was hiding in the thicket. That wild dog must have been 10 meters from her. I'm just going to get hold of Jamie quickly, see if there's a update from her side. Jamie. Jamie, do you think that crossed Philemon's lip? Okay, copy. I'm going to head into the block at where I had last visual of those animals. The last time I spotted one was here, running this way. I'm going to go a little bit further into the block here, and then we're going to switch off and listen. They might have caught that steenbok, so we'll be listening for feeding sounds. Although a steenbok and 5 wild dogs doesn't go very far. That'll be finished in under about 3 minutes. Your eyes open, Andrew?
Yeah, man. Wildy dogs. Where are you hiding? So even with this little green flash we've got at the moment, you can see how much it affects our visibility compared to a couple of weeks ago when there was no green on the leaves. And that is the one thing about the wet season. Sometimes it does make following some of these animals a little bit harder. So we don't have that visibility we had during the dry season. So we're going to switch off and listen in this area for a little bit, and while we do that, we're going to cross to Jamie, who's going to give you an update about her tracking of these wild dogs, and hopefully between the two of us we'll be able to find them again.
Well, that was a very exciting way to start a morning. It was a mad rush. Now, I'm currently sitting in the middle of the block. I was basically driving full speed through here earlier to try and stay with them. They were trying to chase what looked like a steenbok in the brief flash that I saw of it, but they are just a flash of spots as they travel through blocks like this. I did my absolute best to try and stay with them, but it hasn't been that successful. So both Brent and I are checking exactly the same block, but different sections of it. I'm going to go back out into the road now I tried sitting. Now, usually when wild dogs feed, they've got that incredible submissive personality that then makes them beg and twitter at each other. I don't know how else to describe it. It's almost like a bird sound that they make. So I've been trying to, if they did catch that steenbok, I've been trying to listen for that. I haven't heard anything. Whoops, that was the easiest route. There is no easy route out here, but this was the easiest one. Shame. And the family of warthogs also had a very exciting morning. As I drove past their termite mound burrow, they shot out in either direction and sort of parted on either side of the car. Let's see if we can get if they cross this road or not. They are so fast, these animals. We were so lucky to have the visual that we did have of them. These tracks here, all impalas. This is one of the joys of the live safaris, is you just never know how your morning is going to start and where it's going to end up. Certainly wasn't expecting wild dogs to race out all of a sudden. Where they went from here is a mystery to me. If you have any questions that you want to ask us on wild dogs or anything else that you might have seen, just let us know on #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@wildearth.tv. I sort of roughly last had them around here. Still checking really carefully to see. Now, as I said, they were hunting a steenbok, and they're one of our most effective hunters out here. Something in the region of an 80% success rate. And when you see them run, you can understand why. They are unbelievably fast, and it's a tireless speed. They just run and run and run and run until the prey is too exhausted to escape anymore. And you can imagine with 5 of them, how spreading out and running on either side, usually a steenbok can duck and dive if it's running away from a leopard. If there's 5 wild dogs spread out on either side of you, you might duck and dive into the next one. Just before we went live, I don't think they're going to come back here. Just before we went live, there was a hyena walking on top of the dam wall past the wild dogs. And Cindy, you were wondering what the relationship is like between hyena and wild dog. So would a hyena ever try to steal a wild dog kill? And they absolutely would. And the wild dogs, depending on the number of hyenas, they will fight vigorously to defend their kill. They'll snap and threaten and puff themselves up. And you can get very violent clashes between hyena and wild dog. Hyena are much bulkier, they're much stronger, but quite often with a large wild dog pack, they're outnumbered, especially if they're foraging on their own. And the thing with a hyena-wild dog conflict at the site of a kill is that it has to have happened very quickly, because if you've ever seen wild dog eat, they essentially inhale the food that they've caught. They eat so fast. It disappears very quickly, which means that a hyena trying to steal the kill hasn't had time to actually... I'm just going to stop in here if I hear any calls. Sorry, Jigger. I know, it's been a tough morning. This is where I popped out. I've seen some incredible photos of hyenas challenging wild dogs to their kill. But if a hyena is foraging on its own and it comes across a wild dog kill, chances are it's not going to manage it. Good try. It would definitely have a go trying to steal the kill, but it's not necessarily certain that it would be successful. All quiet around us. I'm just going to get hold of Brent, who's trying to call me. Standing by. I'm standing by on Philemon's cut line, almost at Rebecca's junction. Copy. They might have managed to slip across ahead of us and into this block. Brent's just letting me know that he's going to go around where we are now and head. He's going to essentially travel from Gowrie Main up Rebecca's and up Impala Road. And I'm just going to stick around here for a while. Brent's coming up behind me, and then we will do a bit of a switch and loop around backwards the other way and see if we can spot them again. They can just be so unpredictable in the way that they were moving. They were all moving south, but then as soon as they saw that Steenbok, they started hunting that side. Brent's on his way now. Still no sign of them. Can't hear them. Just want to discuss plans a bit more.
Hello everyone. We're going to go check a bit further around, see if those wild dogs have gone even further than this. It is always a possibility with the speed that they move.
Okay, I'm going to go back that way.
Maybe check the boundary.
Yeah, I'm going to check the boundary. Hi. Okay, round we go. Oh. I hope they managed to get that Steenbok, but at least some of us have had breakfast this morning. It was a bit of a frantic start. As soon as the messages started pouring through that there were wild dogs at the dam, there was an immediate race to the vehicles. Chris is absolutely right. Who needs coffee or breakfast when you've got wild dog adrenaline rush running through your veins? Oh, I heard alarm calls. For the most part, birds and squirrels don't alarm call as much in response to wild dogs. That's because obviously being ground-based predators, they're dogs. They don't really tend to climb the trees. Oh, Jigga, okay, let me take you out of low range. What is there? Oh, buffalo. Hello, buffalo. So thick in there. And Kachino John may well be right. They might possibly be in Mala Mala by now, the way that they move. That's why I'm going to go check the southern boundary once again. Just saw tracks coming out there, but I think it's the tracks of the one we were following before. It is one of the southern packs, that's for sure. Oh yes, it is his tracks. Followed him up here. Whether or not they've made it back to Mala Mala is anybody's guess. They might have. These are all their tracks from when we followed them earlier. I'm going to do another loop around, see if I can catch up with them. They were, I mean, we're laughing at the fact that they might be in Mala Mala, but for the most part they were heading south before they got distracted by that Steenbok. That was the direction they were heading in. Which is why I think it's worth looping around and seeing if they finished that Steenbok, they might be carrying on their mission on their way in that direction. That was such an exciting way to start the morning. It's been months since I've seen wild dogs. And the rain's even held off and almost disappeared now. So the recipe for a really awesome day. Around here. Poor old Jigger's been over a couple of trees that maybe Jigger shouldn't have gone over. But we'll deal with that when we get there, when we get home. We'll have a good check and see what's, if any, damage has been done. Brent and I are circling like mad people, trying to figure out exactly where the wild dogs have popped out. But I believe that for those of you who have missed it, or missed this morning's sighting because we went live so much earlier than usual, the lovely Tara Dales has prepared a 1-minute clip for you to have a look at the replay of. So let's have a look at that for now, and I will be back with you very, very shortly. Animals, they are just so incredible to watch and to see. We had some wonderful visuals of them a little bit. There was one that was even calling right behind our car, which wasn't really ideal because we couldn't get a perfect visual of it, but it did that wonderful low whooping sound that they make. Just a contact call between the pack members. They really are the most fascinating, most effective hunters out here, most efficient. They're very, very smart, completely different social structure to most of the ones that we see. Those alpha breeding, with that alpha breeding pair who was probably there at the time. Now, I know that the wild dogs in the area have been denning. I know that there's pups up at Buffelshoek. I'm not sure about the southern pack or which pack this was, and whether or not they have a den site somewhere in that direction. That's actually why I'm heading down here, because I'm fairly certain they are on their way back quite determinedly, and quite possibly towards a den. That there's a pack up to the north of us in Buffelshoek, and then there is this pack, whoever this pack might be, moving back towards a more familiar area around Mala Mala and around the southern Sabi Sands. And Marilyn, you were wondering if that means that they have their own distinct territories, and essentially yes they do. Just checking tire tracks here. They have their own home ranges. As we've mentioned, they can move and cover huge distances. So they have a core sort of central home range, which will be where they tend to den throughout the seasons, throughout the breeding seasons, whenever the female, and it will be pretty much only the alpha females. Sometimes a beta female might breed, but it's very, very unusual. And they'll spend their breeding seasons there, moving further and further from the den as the pups get older. And then occasionally just doing these incredible incredibly long 20, 30 kilometer round trips right to the borders of their home ranges. It's because they can move constantly. They're not like lions or leopards or even hyenas that spend a great deal of their time sleeping. When they're awake during the day, then they are awake and moving and covering huge distances. Which is why we had such a rush to get out and down to the dam, because you just never know when they're going to come back into your zone again. Where have you gone? No tracks coming out here, which is a good sign because this is our border. This is the border of Djuma. This is the southern section. We're not allowed to go there. So we've got to hope that they are still in here somewhere. That one of the dogs was calling behind our vehicle and doing that whooping sound that they make. It's an awesome sound. And GJ, you were wondering if they bark at all. And no, they don't really bark, not like typical dogs. Sorry, distracted. This is hyena tracks though. More like hyena tracks. They don't bark in the same way we understand we hear dogs bark. They make whooping calls, they make little twittering sounds when they beg, whining sounds, much like a pet dog might make. That whining sound when they're begging for something, when they're trying to get attention. And they might yip, but it's not really a full-on bark like domestic dogs do. They've got quite a wide range of vocalizations in that respect. There's Brent's zebra that you were watching earlier. But no tracks of wild dogs coming out. Just hyenas. Alrighty. I wonder where these guys disappeared to. Maybe they stopped and ate that stembock somewhere in this thick block and are just lying down digesting slightly. Now if they do have pups back at the den, and I'm not sure if this pack is denning or not, but if they do, then what they'll bolt down the meal in that way and then race back to the den at some point and regurgitate the food that they've eaten to supply both the pups with food if the pups are weaned, as well as the babysitters, so the adults who've been sitting with them and looking after them. To see them coming back and really spending... Oh, what have we got here? I wonder if he's seen the wild dogs. It's like the Wahlbergs, dark coloured Wahlbergs. Have you seen our wild dogs by any chance?
Bet you he has.
Yeah, I bet he has. He knows where they are. Oops, sorry, car's rolling a bit. I thought I heard a wild dog groan, but it was just Jigger complaining after the morning. It's all quiet. Okay. The dark morph Wahlbergs, but I don't want to stop for too long. I want to keep driving round and double checking that we haven't missed something crucial here. Doesn't look like their tracks have crossed Gowrie Main, which means they are still here somewhere. Between Brent and myself, one of us would have picked up on tracks coming across, and both of us have done circuits now, so they're still in here somewhere. Let's head back around and see if we can find them. I was talking a little bit earlier about the fact that they will bring food back to the den and regurgitate it for the pups, and they make those incredible begging sounds that they practice as in their puppyhood, and that then becomes a feature all the way through their lives. Wild dogs are amazing in that their hierarchies are basically established by begging. So submissive behavior kind of works the opposite to fighting for a hierarchy. It's being submissive to the point that they all fall in line underneath each other. It's really interesting the way that they work. But Marla, you were lucky enough to see wild dogs regurgitating for their pups. And that must have been absolutely incredible to watch. I've seen wild dogs with pups before, but I've never seen them regurgitate at the den. But I have seen that incredible begging submissive behavior when they try and get the adults to give them food. And it's something that will then stick with them for the rest of their lives until they start to move off. It's interesting that the only time they ever really show aggression to each other, to other members of the pack, is when packs have split off and there's a new pack developing. It doesn't often happen, but when it does, and there's a new female who wants to establish herself as the alpha female and the alpha male, that's the only time when you really get aggression shown between wild dogs. They don't fight over food in the same way that lions might do. And they don't fight for mating opportunities because only the alpha breeds. Sometimes the beta female. And for the most part, only the alpha breeds. I think my eyes are playing tricks on me. I'm just going to grab Brent's binoculars. He's got mine. We did a bit of a rapid vehicle swap. Oh my word. I'm just going to put Brent's binoculars back together first, and then I'll look. I don't think so. Nope. Continue on our search. I'm going to head back into the block and keep looking. I think most likely what has happened is they've fed on a steenbok and then just are resting for a moment before they carry on their way. Get hold of Brent on the Game Drive channel. Standing by. Copy that. I'll start heading north, I think. Maybe towards Gallagher area. Korhan! I just saw a korhan bob up above the trees and then drop their wings, which is what they do for their mating display. We've been waiting for them to do that. Now, unfortunately, it seems as though somewhere in our looping around, they have crossed behind us and they've gone south to Hoffman's. So south of our boundary already. How they managed that, I don't know. It must have been just as we'd completed a circuit. They've made it across and they are heading off. In fact, they crossed further south from where we looped back into the block. Oh well, it was still totally worth having a look around and see. I want to see if that korhan does its display again, because that is so exciting. But what a great way to start the morning. It's our first wild dog sighting in quite a long time. Very, very lucky that we did get to have it. And of course we have all of the loyal viewers to thank for that. as we leave our wild dog sighting, let us hear once more from Brent, as I know that he is absolutely excited to having seen those wild dogs. Let's see what he has to say, and I'll catch up with you a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. What a fantastic way to start off the Saturday morning. I'm on an absolute high at the moment, having seen my favorite animals, the African wild dog, or the painted wolf, and that's what their Latin name means, Lichen pictus, painted wolf. So they've crossed out of our Traverse area, and thanks again to all the viewers who let us know that they were at that Djuma waterhole so we could get out there extra early before they started moving. So I'm back in the area where we had those male leopard tracks late last night, and I'm just trying to see if they've come out of the block anywhere. If we have no luck around here, I think we'll head down towards Buffalo's Hook waterhole and see what's been happening in that area. So, wild dogs are called the painted wolf, even though they're not actually that closely related to wolves. If you actually take it, domestic dogs are far, far closer in relation to wolves. And wild dogs are, as I said, the Latin name is lichen, which is actually wolf in French, licon, but they're separated from canis, which is a wolf or a domestic dog. I mean, the domestic dog has got the wonderful Latin name of Canis domestis, so domestic dog. And Canis lupus is the wolf. So wild dogs separated a few million years ago, so they're physiologically slightly different from the canises, even though they are a canid. And Lale in Washington was wondering if their dental structure was more wolf-like than domestic dog-like. Well, the domestic dog and wolf, I said, are very closely related, and they can crossbreed and produce viable offspring. So the domestic dog and the wolf have far more similar physiological structures than a wild dog. A wild dog would not be able to breed with a domestic dog or a wolf. And to put it, wild dogs their own family. And historically, there were a lot more wild dogs around. One of the main reasons they are so threatened and endangered, there's a couple. The first being habitat loss. Wild dogs, unlike a lion or leopard, I mean, lion and leopard do need nice big wild areas to survive, but not nearly as big as a wild dog. I mean, a really big lion territory, big male lion territory, probably be about 4,000, maybe 5,000 hectares if it's a big coalition, and a big male leopard territory probably under 2,000 in this area. Where there is a pack of wild dogs needs on average about 45,000 hectares, so more than half of the Sabi Sands. And they are by far the most effective hunters. Lion, leopard, cheetah all have strike rates of around 2 to 3 out of 10 depending on areas, and the African wild dog has a strike rate from anywhere from 7 to almost 8 out of 10. So 8 out of 10 times that they chase something, they catch it. Makes them really, really effective predators. It also makes them have to move quite a lot, because obviously if they stayed in a very small area, they would wipe out their resources. So that is why they move such big distances. The other two really big threats towards wild dogs at the moment comes from domestic dogs, and it is rabies. And we know rabies is quite a big problem, and there has been a lot of rabies this year in the low veldt all around. I mean, I've already inoculated myself, because I do a lot of walking and stuff in the Hoedspruit area, and there's more rabies. There's an incredible amount of rabies in that area at the moment. So, and then the other is also a canine disease. It's called canine distemper, but basically it's a form of diarrhea. And those two diseases are incredibly bad for wild dogs, being such social animals and having a lot of contact with the other members of the pack. That causes those diseases to spread through a whole pack and even a whole population much faster than it would in, say, an animal like a leopard. So, and as I was saying a bit earlier, before we had to rush off while the dogs were moving, so there's a very few viable breeding populations left in Africa. The only one in South Africa is the greater Kruger. And when I first started guiding in this area, more than 10 years ago now, and there were about 450 to 500 wild dogs in the general vicinity of the greater Kruger, and there was an outbreak of distemper which wiped them down to less than 100, and they have come back. They're probably around 400 dogs in the area again, and that is a sort of a viable breeding number. So each pack that is known is monitored very, very carefully by the Endangered Wildlife Trust, and it is one of the animals that people will go above and beyond to try and save. And there are obviously breeding programs and at different places in South Africa. The other viable breeding populations of wild dogs in Africa, the main ones, the really big ones, are northern Botswana. So basically the whole of northern Botswana, from the Makgadikgadi salt pans right through up to the Chobe River. And that population is one of the larger populations in Africa, probably around 800 or so. And another really big sort of reservoir is the correct word of wild dog genes and genetics is the Kafue National Park, which is a massive national park in Zambia, more than twice the size of Kruger. And they've also got a population of around 1,000. And then the largest intact population of wild dogs in Africa is the Selous Game Reserve in southern Tanzania, where I've been fortunate enough to work. And that's probably 1,500 to 2,000 dogs. The rest of the dogs are in tiny little patchoulets. Now, they also, like most predators, have a very high mortality rate with their youngsters. They can give birth to up to about 20 pups at a time, but you probably
And you're back on the back of Djuma, who's driving surprisingly well considering what I just put her through. And I'm back in the area where Brent had those leopard tracks last night. I'm just double checking to see if it came out, and if so, where. With my eyes peeled and my ears open for any sounds of alarm calls. I was a bit distracted when I was talking about the wild dogs, and then I was in the block, and all of a sudden I said, oh, there's a korhaan. It just bobbed above the top of the trees, and then carried on talking about wild dogs. But just to finish that train of thought, we're just getting to the start of their breeding season. So a red-crested korhaan is a type of bird that flies straight up into the air and then drops its wings and tumbles out of the sky as a way of attracting the ladies. And the higher he flies and the further towards the ground he falls before he opens his wings to break that impact, the more attractive the ladies find it. And we're going to start seeing them doing it more and more often. I'm going to be looking out for them as well. It's always really interesting to watch. It seems like such a silly thing to do. And amazing how these birds have evolved all kinds of different courtship rituals that they perform. from the lilac-breasted rollers that roll in the sky to the korhans that drop out of the sky. And I'm sure many of you will be familiar with those incredible displays that certain species of crane do, those elaborate dances they do in the air. The hornbills do their bob up and down dance with their wings open. There's all kinds of different methods of attracting mates. And then, of course, there's the more practical approach, which is something like what the weavers adopt, which is to prove to your mate that you are the best nest builder in the area, to convince her that you would be a suitable choice as a mate. There's just all kinds of ways of convincing a female that you are the correct life choice for her. But interesting to see how they do it. And I'd love to look further into the whole process and figure out why it is that some birds adopt certain tactics. The nest building to me makes the most sense. Convince her that you're effective. Maybe some of the feeding courtship behavior, like you see with the hornbills. The males convince the females that they can keep them well fed. And I'm definitely a lot chillier now that the adrenaline of the wild dogs is starting to wear off. Alright, boys. You don't need to run away. I think they might be a little bit skittish because it is cloudy and a bit windy as well, making them more nervous than usual. There you go, you can see. I wouldn't call it a gloomy start to the morning. It can never be a gloomy start when you have wild dogs sitting at a dam and then moving across an open clearing like that. Those impala just don't want to be seen. They're ducked away behind me and into thick bush. And I wonder if they spent the nights trying to avoid the leopard that was moving through this block. As we've said before, dark, cloudy, windy nights work perfectly to an animal's advantage, especially something like a leopard or a lion that relies a little bit on stealth and subterfuge to catch their prey. Here's an interesting question for you. Should be relatively easy to get. I'll tell you where I am. I'm on the western boundary of Djuma. And we're just going to have a look at the dung over there. It's a very interesting point. It's on the floor there, and it's all the way up into the bushes as well. If we do a little bit of a tour up, you should see some of it spread quite high, and I've found pieces of dung like this before, almost at the height of my shoulders. So a quick quiz, and it's going to be an easy one, I would think. Whose dung is it that we've just found? I don't see the tracks anywhere there, so it's not fresh. It's not from last night. But it is somebody's dung. Somebody who eats grass. And that's all I'm going to tell you, because I'm pretty sure our regular viewers are going to get it in 2 seconds. And you can send it through to #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@WildEarth.tv and let me know what your thoughts are on that. I've seen it all the way along this road. And it creates an interesting point of discussion, but I'm not going to chat any more about it now. I'm going to wait for your answers to come through. And let me know what you think it might be. Should be an easy one. almost sounds like a woodlands kingfisher, but it's not quite. I think it might be a brown-headed one. It's a little bit early. Oh, let's stop at this parlor here. We chatted a little bit about this yesterday. Have a look at the female in front. Look at the size of her. She is definitely starting to show. They've got another month and a half to 2 months. If we compare their size to the 2 sub-adults behind her, nice and slim, there is definitely a baby impala on the way there. She's looking very, very pregnant. Something that I've remarked upon before is how incredible it is that they retain the level of agility that they do have, even when heavily pregnant like this. And in the next 2 months she's going to start to bulge, and when we stop and we look at them, we're going to be able to see the odd angle of a elbow or a hoof poking out. It's going to be so magical to see. Now, she would have, in order to become pregnant, she would have mated in their breeding season, which is around May. So the end of May to the beginning of June, or the middle of June, that is when they start to mate. And if she got pregnant then that makes her gestation from end of May to the end of November, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, roughly, give or take. If, however, but I don't think so, just judging by how broad her stomach is starting to look. But if she didn't get pregnant in that false breeding season, in that breeding season, then there'll be a second breeding season in around the middle to the end of June and the beginning of July. And that's why you usually get most of the impala lambs born at the same time, usually within 3 days of each other, which is incredible. And that just creates that safety in numbers. But then you get the late births around the end of December, beginning of January, when they start to pop out. Just a couple more extra young looking lambs. And that's just it's a way of the impala as a species making sure that they take absolute advantage of their breeding season. So they're the most common antelope out here. Their species or their population increases by about, red-headed weaver, are we going to be able to get that? No, I don't think so. I think he's going to duck away. He's got his bright red breeding helmet on. Oh, it's all happening in the springtime in Djuma. That little bird that we just stopped to see, I'm going to show you in my book because it's a really, really striking creature. And we are talking about breeding times. This was the only thing I managed to grab out of the vehicle this morning when we swapped around. This is the little bird I'm talking about. That bright red breeding colours of a red-headed weaver. And like all of the weaver species, they build those incredible dangling nests. But interestingly enough, we get all of those weaver nests at the different dams. But interestingly, he tends to target power lines for some interesting reason. So our village weavers, our southern mast weavers, they tend to target trees around dams. But the red-headed weaver decides to build all along power lines. I don't know what it is about that. It obviously imitates the sort of natural environment. They tend to stay away from dams. And it makes sense that weavers will have different nesting strategies to an extent. They also have completely different nest shapes in the way that they build them. So they've all got that design of a round ball with an entrance tunnel, which I'm looking around desperately to try and show you, but I can't see any. But they all have subtle differences in the way that they nest and the shape that nest takes. I think there's definitely a little bit of a spring theme evolving this morning, from pregnant impala to displaying horehounds and red-headed weavers with their breeding colours. Interesting, these impala are just looking very, very skittish. Oh, they're carrying on. And it definitely was an easy quiz that I gave you in terms of whose dung that was. And we've got a lot of correct answers from lots and lots of viewers. So apologies if I don't get all of your names in here. But I believe that Jill and Janet, Valerie, Lucy, many others have all managed to realize that it is a hippo that I was talking about. So an easy quiz for you. But it was still an important point, especially for new viewers, to get to know the various tracks and signs of the animals that move through our area. So the male hippos, and it's only the males that do this, when they move through an area and they're grazing at night, then they mark their territorial boundaries by swishing their tail from side to side, and it scatters their dung. As I said, almost, I found pieces that are up to the height of my head. So they do a serious job of scattering their dung around. It's only dominant bulls that do it. The females will do it in water. So if you've been to Kruger or you've visited somewhere and you've seen them swish their tails in the water, that's not necessarily a male. It's only the males that do it when they're out of the water, and it's only dominant bulls who have their set territories that they will defend vigorously, depending on the amount of water available. And as it starts to get drier and drier, it gets to the point where they really do start to compete with each other in a serious way. But it's interesting because that particular piece of dung, the furthest dam from us, or the closest dam to us with hippos in it is Sydney's dam, which is about easily, I would say, about 5 kilometers away. It's a 10-kilometer round trip, and that's not the furthest I've seen from that dam by far. They can travel 5, 10, 20 kilometers in one night. The males will travel a little bit further to control their boundaries of their territories and mark them regularly. But it's just amazing to think that an animal that looks so clumsy and hefty travels such enormous distances in order to mark where he's going to put his territory. I'm just going along Power Lines Road. I want to double check and see if I can find a nest for you. Yeah, we've talked about very strange ways of attracting females, and the hippo bull marking his territory by spreading his dung all over the plants around him, and probably all over anything in the surroundings. Angie, I think you've got a very good point. No wonder Bob, the Bachelor of Buffelshoek, is single. It's not the most attractive of processes. And I'm sure many of the regular viewers would have heard the sort of traditional African tale about why it is that I think it was actually a Just So story, not an African tale, but why it is that the hippo does this. And supposedly, once they'd lost their covering of fur, the hippo was always too hot and didn't like being in the sun at all, and he went and he begged to be able to live in the dam, in water, to stay cool throughout the hot African days. And he went and he pleaded, but the crocodiles of the rivers and the dams said, no way, you're going to come in here, you're bigger than us, you're going to steal all of our fish, steal all our food. And so it was that the hippo promised absolutely he would never do that. He would only ever eat grass. And the part of the deal was that they would yawn much like we've seen Bob do recently, open their mouths nice and wide so that the crocodiles can check their teeth for bones, and then they scatter their dung as well, just to make sure that there's no fish bones hidden anywhere there. So that is the slightly more whimsical approach to why a hippo scatters its dung with its tail. But it is quite amazing how fast they do it as well. The dung flies off with something equivalent to great force as it shoots away from the flicking tail. Kingfisher call again. I know that we're all eagerly anticipating the return of the woodlands kingfisher, which is one of the last of the breeding migrants to return back to South Africa, and it should be around the end of October, so to hear it now would be a little bit early. I think I was hearing a brown hooded rather than a woodlands kingfisher. Brown hoodeds don't migrate, so that would be more likely. Talking about migratory birds and birds that we can get to see. Molly, you wanted to know if the finches are back. And I'm going to just grab my book and I'm going to show a couple of pictures of the finches because they should all still be around. And I'll explain why in a moment. I'm just double checking a hole in the tree. Nothing exciting hiding there. Just stop for a moment. Hear the hornbills calling, and find a picture of our finches for you. Now, for Molly, our finches don't actually migrate in any way. But the only one that we really are likely to see in this area, and even then it's a bit of a push, is the cutthroat finch. You can see why it's got that name. It's got that beautiful underlying red stripe around its throat. It's actually quite a macabre name now that I think about it. But it's not a migratory species. We are right on the boundary of its range. We might maybe get lucky and see a red-headed finch or a scaly-feathered finch, the two at the bottom of this page. But it would be an exception rather than the rule. We'd be right outside of their range around here. And just to have a quick look in terms of the map, you can see why I mentioned that. So for a red-headed finch and the scaly finch, that is, the green outline is where you find them. And we are just off to the east of that. So just where my finger's pointing. It's not the most specific thing, but if you can see that tiny little red dot, that's where they've been seen once or twice here. But it's an exception rather than the rule. So in terms of finches, there's not that many. But we get a lot of very similar birds that are basically finches. The waxbills and the mannikins, they are essentially finches. They're all in the same family. They just are called a different name. But there you go. Cutthroat finch is the one that we'll be looking out for. You might be thinking of something like a red-headed Quelea, which is the most common bird. Oh, I think it's the most common bird in the world. in terms of just numbers. It's got the highest population of species, of individuals. And I haven't seen any quilias back yet. I've seen them a lot in the more western arid areas of the country. I haven't seen them around the Sabi Sands whilst I've been working here. But it also looks very similar, slightly bigger, slightly stockier than a finch. Whilst I continue my perusal of the northern section of Djuma, the northwestern corner, Brent has been out and about as well, so let's see what he's been up to, and I'll catch up with you a little bit later.
Welcome back, guys. We've been doing some boundary checking to see if we can find any tracks of lion or leopard coming in, and I heard there were some elephants in this area, so we've come here to see if we can find those. Just an update on the leopards that were to the east of us, the quarantine male and Mvula. Their kill was stolen by hyenas last night, and Mvula was seen this morning heading west, and that's towards us. But still quite a long way away, and he's apparently very, very full. So there is a possibility maybe in the sunset safari he, fingers crossed, comes onto this eastern edge of Djuma. And I'm checking to see if quarantine possibly hasn't moved further into this area as well. Whoops, there's a hole. Nearly lost Andrew. I heard the eddies were at this next road junction we're coming up to now. So if we don't see them, we just switch off and listen for a few seconds. They could have moved quite far. It was about half an hour ago that I heard they were here. Let's have a quick listen. So we can't hear anything just yet, so I think we're just going to continue on heading south. Let's see what else we can find. Oh, good morning. Little group of kudu. Having a morning browse. Nice little young boy.
Their necks look a bit funny.
Andrew's noting that their necks look a bit funny. I'm going to get into a better position. I think what Andrew's saying there's ticks. I noticed it on one of the females. And also because it's quite cool this morning, the rest of their body is going to be fluffed up while their necks, the hair's a bit shorter. So not able to fluff it as much. Just popping their necks behind the bushes. But if we have a look, there's quite a lot of little spots or whatnot on the necks, and that is probably ticks. With this early rain we've had, I'm sure the tick population has exploded. There we go, you can see it on this female coming through. And a lot of that will also be them grooming, trying to get rid of those ticks, so it could be a little bit of saliva and stuff that's making their hair stick down. You can see that constant sort of shimmering that they're doing, and that's to keep some of the flies away. You'll see that with a lot of animals. It's sort of a tick, the nerves reacting to something landing on their body, and they even do it when the flies aren't around. Oh, well, let's just have 1 second. No. False alarm. The female looked like she might have spotted something. I don't think so. Quite often in other parts of South Africa, they're referred to as the grey ghosts. No, they're not quite grey. They are unbelievably good at disappearing into the bush. Very interesting. We saw those 5 wild dogs this morning, and from what I saw, they were all males. And yesterday evening, to the north of us, in Buffelshoek, they had 3 adult wild dog with 13 pups. So I think that's the investing pack, and I'm not so sure whether those 5 we saw today belong to the half-tail pack or the Sabi Sands pack, or they are those 5 or they could be dispersal males. You guys just need to listen to this. Oh, that's really unfortunate. Oh, well, we found the elephants, but before we get to the elephants, there have been 2 cheetah found to the north of us as well. I'll keep a listen out. Hopefully they do come towards us at some point. There we go. This is that little herd of elephants we've been tracking. Oh, and it's the 3-tusked female. I haven't seen her in ages. If we zoom in on her right hand, she's got 3 little tusks. She's got a tiny little tusk. It looks almost like a split tusk, but it's not. It's actually a 3rd tusk. And it does happen sometimes with elephants, so I'll try and get you a view of that. I've only seen her once before. So she's the one closest to us at the moment. Oh, there's little ones as well. So we can see this, she's got one normal tusk, and then when she turns her head you'll see she's got a recurved tusk, but much smaller than the one we saw yesterday. But when we have a look at the other side, there's actually another small tusk that is also growing out of that same hole as the recurved tusk. Nice and relaxed. Slowly moving. There we go. And just try to wait for her. Obviously we don't want to drive around and around to try force to see that side. I'm sure we will get a chance to see it when we stay with them. Okay, let's try. There's a young bull that Andrew's focusing on there, probably early 20s. We're just slowly moving and feeding. We're going to try to get around to the other side of her as soon as we do get the opportunity, but I don't want to push the Ellies. I'll let them move at their speed rather. Okay, there's a nice clearing on the other side of them. Yes. Now we're going to just sneak past them. Slowly, slowly. It's always important to keep your revs very low. Move very slowly, steadily. No big noises or sudden movements. And here we go, there's this young bull. Just slowly moving. Look like she's going to unparalleled this. So hopefully we will get a view of that third tusk. So it almost looks like she's only got one tusk when you're looking at her from the front, but as soon as she turns her head to the side, you'll see that recurved tusk, and then just behind that recurved tusk is that little extra tusk. There we go. Andrew, she's turning. There we go. See, it looks like a split, but it's not actually. There's actually a gap between it if you see it from the other side. And it's just growing on top of the other tusk. There you can see there's daylight, that little triangle of daylight when she turns slightly there. That's actually a third tusk, not a broken piece of the recurved tusk. Yes, little boy. So we've been looking at that. Hello, little man. Very interesting sort of recurve and third tusk. And Liz from Wisconsin's wondering whether she would lose it. I don't think so. I mean, she's a fully grown adult already, and it doesn't seem to be causing, oh, can you hear that low rumble, causing her any problems. So I don't think so. The only way that might possibly happen is if that little tusk grows into it and keeps pushing it, but it doesn't look like it's doing that yet. This female's not as relaxed as the rest of the herd, so she's walking, holding her head, making herself look bigger, but still walking a sort of oblique angle away from us. So she's saying, listen, I've got you, I'm watching you, but she is still a little bit nervous around us compared to the rest of the herd. Oh, beautiful little family group. Okay, let's catch up with them again. They're walking with quite a bit of purpose, and elephants do this from time to time. They've obviously got a plan in their head, and they want to be somewhere. And from the looks of things, is that female with the third tusk. Ooh, is that a big bull at the back there? It looks like it. I'm just going to go around. Looks like there's a nice big elephant bull ahead of them. Haven't seen a really big Eddie bull for a while. And we can have a look nicely there. Young bull's joined them there. He's a bit younger than the other one up ahead. So even though they're feeding, they are moving quite specifically, and they haven't spread out like they do sometimes. So if they were going to be more stationary feeding, they would spread out over a couple hundred meters and feed, but they are definitely moving towards a point. And this young boy is destroying this red thorn. There we go. One little bite from that branch you broke and move on. He's after those nice succulent top bits.